started at Google, I think 13 years ago, about. Hopefully it's not an unlucky year. Before joining Google, I had a small software company here in Switzerland, and we started making, various kinds of software for people, including making websites. And right about that time, the whole Google Sitemaps systems came up. So we created a sitemaps generator because it was a neat idea to crawl websites and create sitemaps for them. So that's kind of how I got started in the whole story. And then I got in touch with someone from Google here in Switzerland, and I came to visit the office, and I decided to try to apply for the position. And I think it kind of worked out. It was a long time ago. And let's see, when applying for the role, I flew out to California. This was back in the days when you can travel, unlike now, where I can't come and meet you in person. It was interesting to do the interviews there in California because the first couple of interviews that I had were all by video conference, just like this. So I flew all the way to California only to do interviews by video conference. But I also got to meet Matt Cutts and a bunch of people from the team, so that was really fun. And that was, I think, about 13, 14 years ago, so quite some time ago.
Thanks a lot, John. Hi. First of all, I want to say that we are very proud here at SEO Campus to have you, because it is the first time, I think, that you are present, even if it's during an online conference. We wanted you to ask something about the definition of core algorithm and core updates, because many webmasters are a little confused when at Google you use these kind of terms. So I remember the moment when the panda filter and the penguin filter changed, and those signals are getting involved embedded in the core algorithm. So many webmasters were confused at the moment. And now you are talking about core updates. And visibly, you make a difference between a core update and a normal update, because usually you communicate when it's a core update and not when it's a normal change in the algorithm. So can you tell us more about what is the core of the algorithm and core updates?
Yeah, well, what is the core of the algorithm? I don't know. But I think the whole process that we have with core algorithm updates at the moment feels a little bit suboptimal to me. It's something where I wish the updates, when we make them, they roll out a little bit more fluently, or like step by step, instead of this one big change. So that's kind of as a bit of background. I think the comparison to the early Panda and Penguin updates that had fixed dates, and you can see a jump in the search results at that time, is similar, or even much earlier back, the Google Dance. I don't know. Does anyone here remember Google Dance? Like when the search algorithms would update across the data centers. I think that was like about once a month, something like that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little older than a lot of people here. I can remember that very well. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I think it's something where we always start out with this state where we make big changes, and then it's very visible on that one day, and then we improve things, and then those changes just happen step by step. And that's something that I hope we can make happen with these core algorithm updates as well, where it's not so much one change happens and then everyone is confused, but rather like step-by-step things improve over time. In general, we call these core algorithm updates kind of different from the usual updates that we have, just because they affect so many parts of Google search. And there's something that sometimes sites see very visibly. And one of the reasons that we even talk about this externally, that we even confirm the date on Twitter and all of this, is because we often see site owners who run into this situation that on one day a big change happens and maybe their site goes down, maybe their site goes up in visibility, and they don't know why. And they don't know if they did something wrong. They don't know if there's a technical bug on the server, if it's returning a wrong result code, if Google just changed its mind about something, or like what is the reason for this change.
So we had a little example of that confusion recently. On September 23rd, people just said the community that they seem to see an update somewhere in Google algorithm. So what was it? A core update? A normal update? No update at all?
So I looked into this a little bit because you mentioned that you would ask about it, and it's from our side, it's a normal update that we made. One of the difficulties with changes like this is that sometimes individual sites are very, very vocal. And they go to all of the different forums and they kind of ask or they complain about this problem. And then when you look at it overall, it can look like, oh, lots of people are affected by this change. But then you look into the details and it's like, oh, this is the same person here and the same person here, same website here. It's not as widespread as generally thought. But it is something that I noticed and something that we picked up and passed back on to the team to improve things. And this is not a core update. A core update really focuses more on the understanding the relevance of pages. This is more of a technical thing where we thought these pages are the same, but actually they're not the same.
Okay, thanks. Then we wanted to talk about COVID-19 with you and what it changed on your daily routine, your daily work, and how Google managed to address the challenge about all the queries around COVID-19 that were, of course, very spammed, with sensitive material and so on.
Yeah, so I guess the practical effect, you see that here, that I'm presenting or talking to you from home instead of making the travels to France. So that's unfortunate. It's really frustrating not being able to go to conferences. So that's kind of the practical side. At the moment, the offices in Switzerland are mostly closed. Some people can go maybe once a week, once every other week. Most of the offices in the other countries are completely closed. So that's something from a practical point of view, everyone is working from home, more or less. And from our side, one of the things that I noticed is that the infrastructure to work from home works really, really well. So I don't know, maybe at some point in the future, more of the people from Google will be working from home at least part-time. So we'll see how that works. From a search point of view, I think there are 2 or 3 main things that happened there. On the one hand, we launched a bunch of features in the search results specifically for effects from COVID-19. So that is better guidance for businesses that are temporarily closing, some of the changes in the rich results like virtual events, which we launched, a lot of the special announcement information so that the official sites can get their information out as quickly as possible. What we also did is set up a limited private group for health and government websites where they could get some input from us a little bit faster, just so that they can make sure that their websites work well in search. And especially in the early days, some of these official websites were just completely overloaded and didn't know what to do with all of the traffic. And if we showed them too much in search, they would go down. If we didn't show them in search, then the information would not be visible to users. So that was a lot of challenging work. And also the aspect that you mentioned came up in that on the one hand, people are really worried and they want to find more information in search. And on the other hand, spammers are very interested in being where there are lots of people looking for things. So there's definitely a lot of activity that took place to try to spam these kind of health-related search results. And I think on our side, for the most part, I think we did reasonably well in that we really tried to improve the quality of the health-related search results around these queries. And that's something that has been lined up and which we've been working on for a really long time now. You see that with the EAT mentions in the quality rater guidelines, for example, where we really try to focus on making sure that we have quality results, authoritative results for these queries where people really need to find official information.
Ok. Est-ce que quelqu'un a une question? Ok. Je te laisse enchaîner du coup, Philippe.
Okay, so what is your thinking of other questions to ask you? We saw that at Google you wanted to promote Core Web Vitals. So can you tell us why, in your opinion, Core Web Vitals are so important, and why are you considering using them as a ranking signal in the future?
Yeah, so in general, speed is a very complicated topic, and Core Web Vitals focus a lot on speed and usability. And our goal with the Core Web Vitals is to make it so that it's clearer to understand where your site has issues and to understand better what you could be focusing on. So Core Web Vitals has, I think, an aspect about speed, about interactivity, how quickly things are available to click on and kind of interact with on a website, and about usability. So the cumulative layout shift, which is basically how things change when you load the page. And those are, I think, three kind of simple metrics, and it's something where we included those metrics in all of the various testing tools. They're in Search Console as well. And the idea here is that it should be easier for you to recognize what to focus on. Compared to earlier, when we talked about speed as a ranking factor, it was, oh, we use all kinds of metrics for speed, but we are not going to tell you what to focus on. And with Core Web Vitals, it's a lot clearer. Like, you have explicit metrics that you can try out. You can test these on your site. You can confirm, are your pages good or are they not so good?
And about performance, what about HTTP2? Because a lot of people at Google were promoting HTTP2, and there was an anomaly because Googlebot was not supporting HTTP2, and then you announced a few weeks ago that it is going to happen in a few weeks. So why did we have to wait for a long time to have Googlebot supporting HTTP2?
I don't know why we had to wait. So it's something, HTTP2 is specifically designed to improve the speed of pages in the browser. So it's something which kind of the primary focus is really for users on browsers. And for crawling for search, it's often, I don't know, not so critical for speed aspects. So that's kind of the reason why we decided to hold off on that. In general, HTTP2 and HTTP1, or the original HTTP, is set up in a way that you have to explicitly ask for the faster version, for the HTTP2 version. So it's not that web servers would not be compatible with kind of the older search crawlers, but basically they would be compatible by default, and they can also have this fast mode for users. And in our tests recently, we noticed that there are some things that can be improved with HTTP2 for crawling as well. So we wanted to, on the one hand, tackle this question. It's like, why don't you use HTTP2? And also get those small improvements along the way. And hopefully, I think that will start happening later this year, that we start crawling more with HTTP2 on websites where we think that it makes sense. So the other thing with HTTP2 is that sometimes it has more overhead on the server. So the server has to work a little bit more to deliver fast results. And we want to make sure that we're not causing any problems on servers by crawling them with HTTP2, because if the server has to work more for the same amount of crawling, that doesn't help any either.
Toujours pas de questions? Ah.
Hello, John. Thank you very much for your time. Climate change is a big, challenging thing for the future. And I would like to know if Google will take in consideration this green aspect in the algorithm. I mean, at some moment, Google can have the possibility to show or doesn't show like some kind of website. And I think when you have some kind of heavy page or some kind of content not very clean, like doing, for example, black hat, so that it's not very good for the environment too. At some moment, Google can do something about that, I think. So what is the future about that in the algorithm?
Yeah, I don't know how we could tackle that explicitly. I think for that, what we would need is a kind of a measure first for how difficult a page is to load and to show. And speed, I think, is a little bit reflective of that, but it's really tricky to tell, like, how much CPU time does a page need to use to load, and then also to figure out how does this CPU time, how is that reflected on the whole? So keeping in mind there are like data centers on our side, data centers where the website is hosted, and then users that use whatever connection to the website, like which CPU time is the one that we should focus on. Like if we can figure out what the CPU time is for the user, maybe that could be something we could take into account. I don't know if that's going to be easy to figure out, or if that's going to be something that gives us different search results compared to if we just focused on speed, for example, because oftentimes when a page loads very quickly, it also uses fewer CPU cycles. So there's some, I think, relationship with speed and the amount of CPU time that it needs to load a page, but I don't know if at the moment it would make sense to try to refine that even more. But it's something also we looked into, for example, usability as a ranking factor. So in particular, if a page is available for users who are blind or who have other kinds of disabilities when they're trying to browse the web. And that was also very tricky to figure out what is the right measure to use here and when should we use that as a ranking factor. So at the moment, I don't think we have anything around that with regards to ranking.
Okay.
Hi, John. I have a question about Search Console. You know, you have a report about external links, and sometimes I have some difference between the real links I know and the real links other tools know, and the links I can see in this report. So my question is, if a link is not, if you don't show a link in the Search Console, does that mean that you don't take it in account for your rankings?
No. So in Search Console, we show a sample of the links that we know about from a website. And we try to make it a representative sample of all of the links that we know for that website, but it's not meant to be a complete list of all of the links for the website. So you sometimes see that when there is a site-wide link to your website, we don't list all of the pages from that website that have that link, because it might be a site-wide link across millions of pages on the website. But rather we try to find a sample of those and we show those. So even if the link is not shown in Search Console, it can still be the case that we do use that in our algorithms for whatever purposes.
Thank you. No question?
Okay, no more questions? Okay, let's talk about your daily work, John. I believe that you receive a lot of private messages from everybody, the same with Gary, Martin, and so on. As a Webmaster Trends analyst, you are meeting a lot of people that want to know, that want to get answers about the issues they have on their websites. Recently, Webmaster Trends analysts communicated about the fact that actually there is a policy inside Google that you have to follow, and then you can't perhaps give all the support that you want to give to everybody because of that, because you want actually all the webmasters to be equal between the people who have contacts with you and the people who actually can't get in contact with you. So is it real, and how is it called, and what is it about?
Yeah, I think you refer to the honest results policy.
Yes.
That we mentioned in the podcast. This is something that has been a policy at Google since, I think, before I joined. In the essence, the idea is that just because someone has a contact at Google, that could be because maybe you have, or like looking at it from the other side, maybe it's a client or a partner or a friend or something like that. Just because they know someone at Google, it shouldn't be the case that their website has any preferential treatment when it comes to search. And that includes preferential treatment through information, for example. So this is something where at its base, it's something that we mostly see from the ad side, from the kind of the area where we have, I don't know, a monetary relationship with people, where they might come to us and say, oh, it's like, I'm buying ads from you, but I also have this problem in search, and I will stop buying ads from you unless you fix this problem in search for me. And this is really tricky for a lot of the partner managers at Google who work with these ad clients, because they would like to continue having customers, but at the same time, they also can't fix any problems when it comes to search. So that's kind of the basis of the honest results policy. The idea is you can buy ads from us, you can be our partner, you can be our friend, but just because we have this relationship should not affect the organic search results for your website. And especially on the ad side, that's something where we have a really, really strong firewall between those two sides. They're completely different parts of Google. And when folks from the ad side bring any kind of search question to someone from search, the first response is always, I can't help you. So even if we don't really know if it's about a client or not, but the first response is always, I can't help you. And I think that's really important from our side. And it's something that we need to maintain. It does get a little bit trickier when it comes to people like like my team, where you can contact us through channels like the Webmaster Office Hours or on Twitter or here at events. You can come and talk to us. And when issues are brought up where we think that this might be a broader issue that affects more than just this one website, then that is something that we can take on to the engineering team and have them look at. So it's not so much a case that you can take individual ranking issues to us and we will fix them. But if we recognize that this is a broader issue, then we will try to resolve that. Similar to, I think, the case with the canonicalization in the beginning, when people come to us with these kind of issues and we can tell, like, oh, it's not just your site that has this one problem, but there are lots of websites, or at least we don't know how many websites there are that have this problem, then we can take that to the engineering team and say, look, here's one example of this problem happening. On Twitter, I see a lot of people complaining. In the help forums, I see a lot of people complaining, or at least more than one or two or three people complaining, because it's sometimes really hard to guess if this is a really widespread problem or if this is one individual site. But as soon as we see more than one or two people talking about the same issue, we can often assume it's more widespread. And that's something we could take to the team. So with regards to the honest results policy, the main thing that we see that internally is that interaction with the ad side or the partnership side. Externally, it's something where you also kind of see that when if you buy ads from Google and you try to go to your ads contact and say, I have this problem in search, you'll also get this pushback that they won't be able to help you.
Okay, thank you. Another question about how you communicate towards the SEO community. You give a lot of information on Twitter. Sometimes you complain about the fact that people from the SEO community don't understand exactly what you say on Twitter, or they tweak, they change the sense of what you say, and you are not happy with that. So why are you keeping on using Twitter as a major mean of communication towards the community?
Mostly because it's fast and easy. So yeah, I think one of the issues is definitely that people take things out of context, but I found that happens everywhere. So it happens when we do a blog post, it happens when we do a video, when we do office hours, on Twitter as well, where it's sometimes really tempting to take one specific issue and say, oh, this applies to everything. So maybe one website has a no index on their homepage and suddenly the website disappears from search. It's very specific to that one particular case. It doesn't mean all websites will disappear from search. It's just this one case where this website has a no index. That's what disappeared from search. So a lot of times I think humans like to try to find patterns, and finding those patterns is sometimes really hard. And it's almost natural that people will try to figure out which part of this answer applies to this one specific case and which part of the answer applies to maybe my site as well, or any future client site. And trying to find those patterns is really hard. But I think, at least on Twitter, on the one hand, it's sometimes easy to take these things out of context and find the wrong patterns. But on the other hand, it's also easy for us to go in and say, no, you misunderstood. This is very specific to this one case. So at least there's a little bit back and forth there. I think the alternative of trying to craft a perfect blog post that is very long and bringing that as an answer outside, that would result in us writing one blog post a month or one every other month, which doesn't help anyone either, because people just have all of these individual problems and we want to help them to figure things out.
But on the other hand, we saw that a lot of videos are now broadcasted from Google about a lot of new topics. So perhaps this is a new answer. But yes, what you say is Twitter is easy, it's quick. So it's a good way to answer quick questions. If you have to write a blog post, it will take a lot more time, I think. Okay, so I remember an example about that. You know, a few months ago, people were talking about the domain authority, and Gary goes on Twitter and say, "Okay, this is not a ranking signal," and half of the community were just thinking, "Okay, so link signals are not existing anymore. What the fuck? What is it?" And that was not exactly what Gary was telling, of course, because it's a signal that is actually not computed at Google, but in a tier tool. Somebody else is computing this, and it has nothing to do with a Google ranking signal. So yes, it's a tough thing, and I think there will be more misconceptions in the future for sure.
I think there are always misconceptions. They will always happen. But my preference is always when talking with the people on my team, like Gary and Martin, my preference is for them to speak more rather than to speak less. And especially if the option is we will write one blog post and it will take 2 months to get everything approved, or we can just do a quick tweet that maybe gets taken out of context and we can do another quick tweet to improve that. I prefer to have us speak more often rather than to have us speak less often. So that's kind of my general philosophy there. It's easier to improve things if you can speak quickly, if you can give the information very quickly. And it's also easier to respond to issues that come up at a certain time if you can just react to that. If people come with a problem and we can react to that, it makes it a lot easier than to say, oh, in 2 months, we will have a blog post, and then you can look at the answer there.
Okay, I'm not sure that the SEO community sees the efforts that you put into transparency and the fact that actually you communicate more and more. That's the issue. I know that it is the truth, but actually, 20 years ago, I remember Google was not communicating at all. It was very difficult to have information from Google at that moment. And even 10 years ago, it was not like this. So I know that you make a lot of efforts to give more information about a lot of things. But it's difficult for the community to see that as well because they are begging for more and more information. So it will be never enough.
Yeah, but I think it's also something where a lot of the community has really grown much more advanced and become a lot smarter. They do events like you do where people spread like really good and strong information. They understand a lot of the technical details much better than before. And I think it has kind of grown on both sides. So we try to bring more information, but also the community as a whole has just gotten so much stronger. And there are always these, I think, gray areas and edge cases where people try to trick their way through. But on a whole, it feels like it's a very strong community and they're very smart and they know what to do from a technical point of view, which solves, I would say, like 70–80% of the problems.
Okay, guys, so do you have another question? Okay, last one.
Sorry, maybe this is a very naive and large question, so sorry for that, but I was wondering what's the position of Google as regards the huge increase in content production via AI, and what do you think about it from an environmental point of view, first, maybe as regards pollution and so on, but also from a final user point of view, so the relevancy and the legitimacy that type of content may have for Google?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects there. On the one hand, there's the aspect of using this as a tool to creating good content, which I think is really important. And I think it's something that it's worth investigating more, doing more research on, to really take a lot of the ideas around automatically generating content and figure out how can you use these techniques to improve the quality of the information online, or to improve the speed of the information that is spread online. So one example that's, I think, a few years old now is that in some areas, they do earthquake content like this. So there's like literal earthquake content in that news websites process the feeds from the different seismographic sensors. And when they register that a big earthquake took place, they automatically create a page on their news site explaining about this earthquake. So it's something where they're automatically creating a news article based on direct input. And you could imagine this going a little bit further, maybe with more advanced automatically generated content, where if we can recognize that some event has just taken place and it's in the middle of the night and nobody has time to quickly write an article, it could be possible to have some of this automatically generated. And then when people come in to refine the article, they can do that based on the structure that's already there. So I think in general, this kind of automatically generated content can be very useful to use as a tool. And I'd really recommend anyone who's looking into kind of this kind of automatically generated content to think about how you could use that as a tool. It could be, I don't know, maybe at some point something like a spreadsheet where you work with it and it's more a matter of, well, you're using it in a good way. And of course, the other aspect that also always comes up with this kind of automatically generated content is it's easy to generate something that looks legitimate, but it's actually completely made up and false. And I don't know what work could be done in that direction to improve that. But in general, I think if we can make the positive uses of this kind of machine learning, artificial intelligence, automatically generated content much more compelling, then that at least drives the research in that direction rather than in the direction of how can we confuse people more so that they think this is legitimate, but it's actually completely fake.
Thank you.
Does that kind of go in that direction?
Yes. Last question.
Hi, John. I have a question for you. I was in another room and I heard from an SEO consultant that there was a bug on the href lang with the attribute xdefault. And I was kind of surprised because it said that it was better not to use it because Google had a hard time sometime to actually understand it. So I wanted to ask you if you confirm or there was something not working well or...
I'm not aware of any bug happening with the xdefault. Also, it's like hreflang in general is something that has been working fairly automatically for a long time. So I'm not aware of anything being broken there, but hreflang can be very complicated when depending on how you set it up. And it's very hard to diagnose why something is happening one way or a different way. So I can totally sympathize if someone set up a website with xdefault and hreflang with different versions and it didn't work as expected, that it's easy to assume that maybe the hreflang was broken on Google's side. But I'm not aware of any bug in there.
Time to say goodbye. Thank you for your time.
Oh man, I wish I could come to see you in person again.
Yeah, perhaps next time.
Yeah.
So we will be glad to welcome you in Paris next time. So I hope that you will be able to travel. Okay, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Bye,
everyone.
Bye.
Have a good evening.